Hey solos, so you're going to Walt Disney World all by yourself, and you do kind of have a hope in your heart that you will get a hug from Mickey Mouse, or maybe one of the princesses, or a Star Wars character. Where can you meet characters, and what are some tips and tricks for interacting with them as a solo adult? Well, solo spoiler, there are places all over Walt Disney World where you can meet characters, and it is a super cool thing to do when you are there as an adult solo. It's not really that awkward at all, although I know we can get in our heads about that. So in this episode, I'm going to focus on that. Hi everyone, it's Samantha. Olaf may not know who Samantha is, but now you do. And welcome to Disney Solo Magic, the #1 podcast for solo travel to Disney World. In this episode, I'm continuing the little series that I'm doing. Last week I talked about, well, not last week, 2 weeks ago, I talked about seeing characters. This week I'm going to be talking about meeting characters, and next week I'm going to be talking about dining with characters through character dining. In this episode, I'm going to focus on where you can meet some characters and a couple tips for thinking about your interactions with them and like doing those interactions and how special it can be when you were there solo and you were interacting with the characters. So I cannot wait to share this episode with you. And I want to apologize for not having an episode last week. I actually recorded it, but my poor voice just died on me by the end of the episode. And then my throat was totally terrible and I had no energy left because I was still recovering. I had no energy left to record it. So by the time I got energy back, my throat back, the list of other things in my life to do just got super long. So I'm super sad about that, but it is better that I just recorded it with a full regular voice and energy level than trying to make do with what I had recorded being still kind of sick. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And it's kind of a perfect time for this episode to come out because it is American Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to Americans who are celebrating, because as you're there with your family and maybe you're dealing with some like dynamics that are just, very triggering and they're just grating on you, you can like go in your mind to imagining what it would be like to just go and, like I said, meet Winnie the Pooh, get a hug from Mickey Mouse, give a high five to, I don't know, Chewbacca or whatever. So maybe this is actually the perfect time. And then next week, when you are sick of all of your Thanksgiving leftovers, you can also be listening to the episode about character dining and plan where you're going to do character dining on your next solo trip. Now, during the downtime, by downtime, I mean the time that I was sick, I was listening to a lot of different podcasts because I was, just like lying in bed. And, my podcast host has been sending me a ton of emails encouraging me to monetize the podcast by putting ads and things like that. But when I was lying in bed sick and listening to all these podcasts, the ads were just so intrusive. They're loud. There were so many of them. They often don't fit the theme of the podcast. And so even though the podcast has grown so much in the last few months, so thank you so much for both sharing, but also listening to all the new listeners, I've decided not to monetize the podcast anytime soon because, again, I just want to make this little auditory bubble where you can kind of think about and imagine your own solo Disney trip. So I'm going to keep it without ads. However, if you wanted to buy me a coffee, you could buy me a coffee. In fact, there is a website called buymeacoffee.com. And if you go to buymeacoffee.com/Disney_solo_magic, you will find a page for me. There's also a link in the description below and you can buy me a coffee. Now, of course, it's like a metaphoric coffee because this week, if you go and buy me a coffee, quote unquote, buy me a coffee, it actually will go towards my soda and popcorn when I go see Moana on Wednesday. Moana 2, I'm so excited for seeing it. I know all of the hubbub has been about Wicked, but I've been mainly excited to see Moana. So if you want to go buy me a coffee, you can buy me a coffee and know that you are paying for my soda and my popcorn at the movie theater this week. So thank you so much. It starts at $3 American. There's no additional fees. You can do it through Apple Pay. It's a really simple click. If you wanted to support the podcast more than $3 American, you can buy multiple coffees. and kind of increase that donation. So thank you so much. But nothing on the podcast is going to change if you aren't able to support me by buying a coffee, or if that isn't the way that you want to support the podcast. So do not worry about it if you didn't want to buy me a coffee. But if you wanted to support the podcast without that monetary support, you can always, like I said, rate, review, subscribe, and share. And as you know, you can listen to this on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And giving some listens, giving some views, giving some, attention across all those different places, especially poor, sad little YouTube, that is just wonderful. So thank you so much for the support. Now, you probably also know that I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. The best way to get in touch with me is through Instagram for sure. And the links to all of those things are in the description below. And if you're not following me on Instagram, make sure you're following me on Instagram this time next week, because I will be at Disney World and I will be posting as much as I possibly can to share the solo vacation with you. All right, I think that's enough preamble. Let's get into it. All right. So, it's been really interesting when I recorded this episode, but when I planned it and then recorded it, kind of thinking about how to put all this information together. It's always hard to know solos, how people come to Disney podcasts or vlogs or TikToks or whatever. Are you going in at entry level, or are you going in with an expert wanting to learn a little bit more? And I know for myself, when I started watching and consuming Disney content like this, it's a little bit of both. And so when I think of these episodes, I think of it as this blend of both. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about just kind of an overview of where you can meet characters across the 4 parks. And then I'm going to talk about some tips and tricks for meeting the characters as a solo adult. And also, I should just say, it's not as awkward as you think. It's not awkward at all. It's only as awkward as you make it. And that sounds like a lot of pressure on you, but I don't mean it like that. I don't mean it like you come in as an awkward person and therefore make it awkward. I mean, there can be a narrative in your head that you can go in with, being this is weird, this is weird, this is weird, I shouldn't be here, I'm solo, I'm an adult, why am I meeting a princess? That narrative can go off in your head so much that you aren't there in the moment, and then it becomes awkward for you, even though you have every right to be there as the kids and the families, and you need to turn off that narrative in order to really embrace how magical it is to meet these characters. Now, I talked about in the last episode about the 4 different ways that you can just see characters. And the first one was parades and cavalcades and entertainment and things like that. And I said in that episode that is a really great entryway into realizing how much you actually want to see some of these characters. I know that was the case for me. When I started going as an adult and I started going by myself, I was I don't need to meet any of the princesses. I'm an adult. I'm solo. It's totally fine. I don't need to wait in line to go meet Mickey Mouse. It's totally cool. And then we weren't really a parade family when I was growing up. So going to see parades has never been a huge thing for me. But I remember this one solo trip, I walked into Magic Kingdom and the Festival of Fantasy, sorry about that, parade was going on as I was going underneath the train tracks, at Main Street USA. And it was so utterly delightful to see all these characters and to see the princesses waving and to see all these additional characters dancing around. And then when Mickey and Minnie came around the corner, I was oh my God, this is so much fun. And I'm you know what? This is why I'm here. This is what is so magical about Disney World, because those Disney characters have been ones that you have grown up with, that have been part of the global, Western, North American, Canadian cultural storybook, literally, for so many of our lives, that to see those characters in quote real life can really touch a key part of ourselves, that are yes, these are the stories that I grew up with. These are the stories I connected with. These are the stories that I escaped from. These characters are ones that I relate to. These characters are ones who have consoled me. These characters are ones that make me laugh. These characters are ones that I don't have conflicted relationships with. These characters are one that I don't have to tell them to like pick up their socks every day. And so being able to like lean in to how magical it is to be able to see these characters is really exciting, and I speak from experience. And so, like I said in the last episode, after being able to see them, it is really exciting to meet them. And there's a couple different ways that you can meet characters. First are informal meet and greet settings, and that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. The second is kind of random pop-ups at like hotels, for example, and I always love those. Like, I remember I actually was with somebody on a trip, and we were sitting at the Riviera, and the characters came into the lobby, in particular Daisy, and I was like, bye. I just got up and took all these pictures. Like, it was just so much fun to meet with them and pose with them. And so definitely lean into any of those interactions that you see. And then the fourth way is character dining, which I'll talk about next week. So let's talk about kind of formal meet and greets. All right, so let's start with an overview of the different parks. The fact is you can meet Minnie and Mickey at all 4 of the parks. You can also see some of the OG characters at all 4 parks as well. However, it's not necessarily always the same OG characters. So Donald, Daisy, Goofy, Pluto, Chip and Dale do make an appearance across the 4 parks, but not necessarily consistently. Like, I don't think you can see Daisy at Epcot, for example. Now, again, I'm not talking about character dining, even if they're at the parks. I'm talking about kind of formal or informal meet and greets in the parks. But you can see the OG characters and Mickey Mouse across all 4 parks. Now, what's interesting, however, is that you can only see Mickey and Minnie in their like most classic outfits at Epcot, and that's in the new Communicore area. Whereas if you're going to Magic Kingdom, you will see Mickey as a magician. If you go to Animal Kingdom, you'll see Mickey in like a safari outfit. If you see Mickey at Hollywood Studios, you'll see him like in old Hollywood glam and like a tux and tails. So if you just want to see Mickey in like his classic outfit, the only place you can see that is actually at Epcot at the new Communicore Hall. Now, I don't want to rant about the Communicore Hall because I do find it was like a little disappointing when it opened. So I won't. I'll just leave it there. I will not rant about the Communicore Hall or the character meet and greets, despite the fact that they just built this. But anyway, that is a place that you can meet all 4 characters actually at once. At Magic Kingdom, you can meet Mickey Mouse right at the beginning, right at Main Street USA, but then to see the other characters, that's back in the circus area. At Epcot, like I said, you can see those 4 classic characters at Communicore Hall. At Hollywood Studios, you can see Mickey and Minnie in 2 separate lines in a like formal meet and greet area where they're in their like Hollywood finery, and Minnie actually just got a new outfit, so it'd be kind of cool to go see that. Donald and Daisy do kind of pop-up meet and greets or just kind of like interactions, both in front of Grauman's Chinese Theater, but then kind of close to where Muppets Land, sadly, is currently, but won't be in the future. And at Animal Kingdom, you can see Mickey and Minnie together at a special meet and greet spot. And you can see Donald and Daisy right now in Dino Land. And they're like wearing these kind of cool, like fortune teller type outfits. And so I'm sure their meet and greet will be moved to another convenient location once they close Dino Land. So that's where you can meet all the OG characters. Now, you can't necessarily meet the rest of the characters in all of the parks. Some of the parks will really feature some of the characters. So, of course, when you are in Magic Kingdom, you'll be able to see the princesses, like all those classic fairy tale characters you'll be able to see by and large large at Magic Kingdom. But what you might be surprised to know, I'm always surprised by this, you can see a lot of those princess characters at Epcot as well. There are meet and greet areas for a lot of the princesses around World Showcase, which I always think are really cool. Like, remember, those fairy tales came from different European traditions. Well, I guess not just European traditions, they came from global traditions. So you can see some of those characters in the locations where those stories came from. Mulan in China, for example, Snow White in Germany, etc. Hollywood Studios is where you can see the Star Wars characters as well as Toy Story characters. Now, I do just want to give this a little bit of a shout out. Also, not disclaimer, but I was talking to a character attendant at Hollywood Studios, and she was saying that she actually will take off May the 4th from being a character attendant because of how hectic it is in Star Wars land in seeing the characters. So May the 4th is like Star Wars Day, because it's like May the 4th be with you. May the Force be with you. And she says that it is so hectic. The lines are so long. It can get really, really stressful for both the characters as well as the character attendants. So just a friendly reminder, if you are going to Star Wars land on May the 4th, to just be kind, extra kind to the characters. And maybe you don't want to meet them that day. Maybe you'll meet them the day before or after, just to kind of give them a break because the lines are so long. But, that's something to think about as well. I also just want to say, I've mentioned this in the podcast before. Star Wars is not my thing. And it would be really cool to have someone come on the podcast and talk about their experience going solo to Disney just to do some of the Star Wars stuff. It'd be really great to get some of those perspectives. So if that's you, send me a DM on Instagram. To move over to Animal Kingdom, this is where you can see some characters from DuckTales, which is kind of random sometimes, characters from Up, and problematically, you can also see Pocahontas, which, again, she shouldn't be there. Animal Kingdom represents the continent of Africa and the continent of Asia. I don't know why Pocahontas is there, but there you go. So there are places to meet the characters across all the parks. And again, there are some restaurants that do character dining where you can meet characters and not go to the parks. And again, sometimes the characters will pop up at different hotels, things like that. But of course, I'll talk about character dining next week, and you can't predict when the characters are going to do pop-ups at any of the hotels. So I'm just going to put those aside. But these tips certainly will make sense if there's a random pop-up of a character as well as these kind of formal meet and greet settings. So by and large, there are two different ways to see these characters in these formal settings. And one is in a building that was specifically built to do a meet and greet. And there's a line that you go in and all that stuff. Currently, the Lightning Lane system that is in place does not have character interactions as part of the Lightning Lane. But Genie Plus, the predecessor, did, and so did Fast Passes, I'm pretty sure. So it will come, but right now you can't skip the line, you just have to wait in lines. So there are these buildings, like I said, that are designed for these formal meet and greets, but then there's also some outdoor locations where they also do formal meet and greets, but you might not even know that there's going to be a meet and greet in that area unless you look at the map. And so there's this kind of balance between characters that you can just kind of see out in the open and then ones that you have to go into a particular queue and meet. And the way I always kind of understood it is the more kind of popular the characters, the more formal the setting. And that's because they want to both manage the crowds, but also manage the cast members who are characters, who are character attendants, to be able to get them in and out of different locations pretty quickly. And in some of those locations, there's also multiple rooms where they can put cast members or where they can put guests. So again, this is something that maybe young ears shouldn't hear. But there are 2 rooms to meet Mickey Mouse at Magic Kingdom. And that is how they get the crowd going really quickly through, because of the fact that there are actually 2 locations. It's not just one Mickey Mouse, it's multiple. Of course, there's only one Mickey Mouse in our heart, but logistically, there's 2 in Main Street USA. Now, there really isn't much of a difference other than like the length of the line between these formal meet and greets in these outdoor settings and the formal meet and greets that are in actual buildings. The difference is that you're out in the open in the ones that are out in the open. And I actually found as a solo adult, those are easier for me to do in my brain than the ones in the particular lines. And maybe it's because I don't like waiting in a line, but I didn't mind waiting in lines outside. I think there's something about like committing to an indoor line where it's like, do I really want to do this? It's like, it's very easy to kind of talk yourself out of it when you can't see the end of the line. But in these like outdoor meet and greet spots, you can often see the characters. They're not that far ahead of you. So it really kind of engenders like extra excitement, I think, about like, ooh, I get to interact with them very soon. So I find as a solo adult, it has been easier for me, like the entryway of meeting characters have been easier in these outdoor formal meeting spots because it is out in the open. You are like getting a little bit more excitement because you get to see the characters interacting with people ahead of you. And also the commitment just seems a little bit lower. Like, oh, I'm just walking around and oh, there's a character. Sure, no problem. You can get a picture with me, Whereas like going into a formal area for a meet and greet, like that's a commitment to your time. Now, again, these could be gymnastics that I'm just playing in my brain, but those gymnastics have to do a lot with being there by myself. And again, I don't want you to feel any judgment when you are there. I don't think that people are judging in the way that us solos sometimes can get in our brains. But I'm speaking from experience. When you're standing in a line, I don't know if you can hear my cat next to me. She's chirping at some birds. She's actually napping, and she has one eye open, chirping at the birds outside. Funny story, actually. This is not about characters, but it is about Disney. I was doing the Kilimanjaro safaris at Animal Kingdom, and, I had a great tour guide, and they were doing their tour and all that stuff, and we saw the cheetahs, and they were saying about the cheetahs, like, the cheetahs don't roar like lions do, but they chirp as a way to like try to attract their prey to them. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. Just like my house cats. And then I was like, oh my God, that's why my house cats are chirping to try to like bait and switch literally the birds that are outside the house that cannot hear them to come in so that they can kill them. And so I learned something about my own house cats by going on Kilimanjaro Safari, which was great. So, the more you know, there you go. Anyway, let's get back to characters. So the point was, you shouldn't feel anxiety, but I know you might feel anxiety because I feel anxiety sometimes too. I think it's important that we like shake it off and remember that like that's why we're there, right? However, thinking about ways to do the things you want to do and lessen that anxiety so that you can kind of strengthen that muscle, I think is really important. And for me, again, going to see the parades and the entertainment and then doing meet and greets that were outside was a way I was able to like strengthen that muscle of going to meet characters on my own. And now I will go, especially if I'm wearing something that I want one of the characters to see, I will go and do the indoor lines as well. But it's usually my preference is usually the outdoor lines. So anyway, you can decide what is more comfortable for you. But I really wanted to just talk about my own process of where I'm comfortable with. So let's talk about some tips and tricks for meeting characters when you're solo. So the first one, as I've already talked about in this episode, is to not go in thinking, this is weird, I am weird, this is awkward, it's going to be awkward, I shouldn't be doing this. No. You need to shake that off. You need to get that out of your brain. You have every single right to be there and take pictures with the characters as the kids and the families, and you should just do it. That character attendant that I was talking about earlier on, the one that talked about Star Wars, she actually was saying what was really interesting is how often family groups will come and take pictures. And it's really clear, she was saying, that it's the adults that want the pictures with the characters more than the children themselves. And she was saying, like, and she's been a character attendant, she said, for like over a decade. She was saying that the adults just had to do it. Just like lean into it. Just like go and get your pictures. It's really fun. Go and do those pictures. And she's like, it's always just so funny to see the parents like hang back to be like, no, it's okay. I don't need a picture with Donald Duck. But really, they're the most excited. And so it was so interesting for her to say this from her experience, because it's the same for solos, right? Like we might think, oh, this is like so weird and so awkward. But the fact is all the cast members want you to have an amazing time, and they want you to interact with the characters. That helps build up this Disney lore. And so my first tip is just borrowing from what she was saying. Go and do it and lean into it, and don't, get in your brain about being too cool or too adult or too solo to do it. Like, no, just go and do it. Go give them hugs. Go. I've done so many solo stories now, and they're always so amazing. Please go back and listen if you haven't listened to all of them. And I actually have a couple ones coming, which I'm really excited about too. But so many of the people that I've done the solo stories with have said, like, sometimes you just like need a hug from Mickey Mouse, So just like, go get your hug from Mickey Mouse. Like, just lean into it. Now, my next tip is kind of a counter tip. So a lot of times, and this is advice that I would hear too, a lot of times from different content creators or vloggers or whatever, you'll hear people say, like, go with some questions to ask the characters. That will make it a lot easier for you. Now, of course, there's two different types of characters. There's ones who talk, and then there's ones who don't. And so going in with questions to ask them seems like a really good way to start your interaction with the character, whether they are talking or they're not talking. However, my counter tip is to not necessarily do this. So there have been times where I knew on a particular trip I wanted to go and meet a character because I was going to wear something that maybe like aligned with their own character or their own storyline, and I wanted to like show them. So I knew I wanted to go and meet these characters. I went in with like different questions. I like prepared myself, all this stuff. And what I found was every single time it did not matter. It did not matter that I had questions prepared. In fact, it threw me off because the whole time I'm going there, I'm like, ooh, make sure you ask them this question. This is the question that you have, like all of this stuff. And then, and this is like the key thing I want to impart on you, they start a particular narrative. They will interact with you first in ways that you can't really get your question in, which is actually fine. It's completely fine. Staying in the moment, like working with the character who is in front of you interacting with you, is a much better way to have those interactions. Because when I was going in with like particular questions that I had in my own brain, I wasn't really responding to the character the way that they were interacting with me. And then it just kind of threw off the whole interaction. I feel like it's happened a few times actually, but I can't think of a particular example right now other than at a character dining. So again, I'll talk more about character dining next week, but this one particular interaction with the princesses actually at princess dining, again, going solo, I had all these like questions or comments that I was going to say to the princesses as they came by. But the fact is, like, these women came up to the table and already had something to say. They already commented on the color of my purse, or they said happy birthday, or all of these different things. And so here I was like, how do I say blah, 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 blah. No, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. The best thing to do was just to respond to them and have a conversation back with them. Like, oh, they complimented the color of my purse. Well, like maybe I'll show them some other details on the purse. So I'm not saying like don't talk to them. Don't be prepared to talk with them. What I'm saying is don't go in with such a plan that you don't just go with the flow. And what I've also found is when you are going to say something or ask a question or point something out that is related to the environment around you, that also has been a really great way to build out more like quote unquote conversation. I'm thinking of Mickey Mouse because he doesn't actually talk back. Than just going in with like a strict question alone. So a Mickey Mouse example, I remember Molly from Mammoth Club, but this is when she was doing all ears videos. She would say that when she would go to the different parties, like Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party or the Christmas party or whatever, she would go in, she'd meet Mickey Mouse, and she's like, well, you're the host of the party. I wanted to say hello first. So in my brain, I was going to go in and meet Mickey Mouse and say a very similar thing. But it just didn't feel good. It felt really awkward, actually, when I said it. And instead, I did say it, and it just like didn't lead anywhere. Instead, what I did was I also was like looking at all his magician stuff, because where you meet Mickey Mouse at Magic Kingdom is like the backstage of a magic show. I pointed to some of the magic stuff that he had, and I was like, is that Mary Poppins' umbrella? Did you borrow that for your magic show? And so we interacted with the set around us, and that actually led to some really great interactions with this character, because even though he wasn't talking, like pantomiming, like knowing who the character was and how he quote unquote borrowed it and all of these different things was just such a great way to interact not only with the character but also with the set around us. And I've found that it's been really, really cool as a way to kind of interact with characters. Don't go in with something because then that can throw you off, but be aware of what is happening and feel free to comment on the set, because those characters know about the set. Those characters know about the different elements of the set and their costumes and their storylines. And so if you follow their lead, but then you kind of like yes and them, which is a thing that you do in improv, you like will say yes to something and then extend it. That is a really great way to have a character interaction that is fun and meaningful and also unique to you. Now, this isn't really a tip. It's just a reminder that it's not nice. It's not nice and it's not cool to ask the characters questions outside of their universe, or to like make them feel awkward by asking them like adult questions. And by that, I essentially mean don't sexually harass them. There's quite a few videos online of former cast members who were friends with princesses, which means that they played those princesses in the parks, of just getting really awkward questions from people. And obviously don't do that, but also don't try to be, clever. And ask them questions outside their own stories, their own universe. It's not nice. It's not nice for the characters. It's not really nice for you. And it's really awkward for the cast members as well. I don't feel like anybody who listens to this podcast would do that, but it's just a reminder, like, it doesn't make you cool to make the cast members or the characters feel awkward, Another tip is a reminder, actually, not only to not be creepy, but it's a reminder that you can get the characters to sign things. Now, a lot of times the kids will use autograph books, and you might think to yourself, like, I don't need an autograph book full of, like, signatures from the different characters. However, they will sign other things. They will sign like linens, for example. So if you had a pillowcase, or I know there are some quilters that they'll get characters to sign individual quilt squares, or if there's a t-shirt, not one you're wearing, but one that you are going to wear, perhaps like the one that you bring to the park. I've seen character signatures on baseball caps, like the brim of a baseball cap. I've seen a lot of signatures on like the matting of a photo frame. I've seen people get signatures of different characters on their Loungefly purses or on their backpacks. So, for example, I know I have a Loungefly purse that is like different fairy tale books. It's a purse, but it looks like books. And I've seen a woman that had the same purse, and in the inside flap of that particular purse, she has all the princesses who are represented in those particular books sign the purse. So that's a cool idea as well. So just a reminder, you can bring things to sign. They won't sign your body. They won't sign your baby. Although if you're going solo, I guess you're not bringing a baby with you, but they will sign things. So if you want to get creative in the types of things that they sign to, maybe create another piece of artwork, or again, like a place to have photos or whatever, that's a really kind of cool idea as well. I also saw this really, and I've shared it on Instagram, of this way that people had been displaying their mini ears using photo frames from IKEA, and there is a mat on those photo frames, even though you're placing the ears kind of in the frame. I'll see if I can find it again and reshare it. And you can get like a princess, for example, to sign the mat of that particular photo frame if you have ears that correspond to the different princesses or the different characters. So feel free to get kind of creative in what they sign. Creative, but also nice. Because that could be like a really cool way that you bring the magic home with you. And the final tip is one I've kind of already said before, which is when it is your time to get your photograph and to get your hug and to have your conversation with the character, make sure you really take up that time. Make sure you use that time. Don't feel like you need to be like, oh, it's fine, we can just do one selfie and move on. Like, have those interactions. The characters want to interact with you. That is literally their job. Have those interactions. Have those conversations. Get a few different photographs. Like, really embrace the time that you have there and take that time up. Don't make yourself or your time smaller because you are there as an adult by yourself. Doesn't matter to the character. It doesn't matter to the people behind you in line either, even if they suggest that it does. It doesn't matter. You take your time. Do not worry about what anyone else will think or do or need or anything like that. Take up your time. That is so, so important. And just really, really enjoy that time. Now, I'm going to end this episode with some practical kind of tips as well. Number one, how do you know where and when you can see the characters? So the first thing is to make sure you have your My Disney Experience app. Now, when you open up the app, it will default to the map and it will default to wait times. If you look at the top of the map, it will say wait times with a drop-down menu. You might not think it's a drop-down menu, but there's a little arrow facing down. If you click on that, you will see that one of the elements that you can sort map by is characters. When you click on this, it will pop up where all the characters are going to be at that particular park and the different times that they are there. Now, usually when it's an outdoor meet and greet, they'll meet for like 15 minutes and then sometimes they'll go back in for 15, 30 minutes and come back in. So you'll see a lot of times that seem very close to each other, but remember, it's kind of a tight, finite time to make sure that the crowds don't get too long, to make sure the cast members get a break, and then they can come back out. With the meet and greets that are in buildings, it's usually just continuous because, frankly speaking, there is like literally a staff room and probably staff that can spell off the different characters that are connected to that building. So whereas the outdoor meet and greet times will be kind of at particular times, the meet and greets in buildings will be continuous for most of the day. But always check. And you can do that through the My Disney Experience app. The second kind of practical tip is to make sure that you do take all the pictures that you want. So there are two different ways for the most of the places that I'm talking about where you can take pictures. And the first is Memory Maker. So just a reminder that you don't need to buy the photo package to get photos with the PhotoPass photographers. So the PhotoPass photographers usually are wearing green shirts, but in some of the meet and greet locations, it's actually like a robot in the wall that's taking your picture, and you can get as many pictures as you want with that PhotoPass photographer or that PhotoPass robot. When you are in one of the meet and greets that have these like automatic robots, when you leave the building, you scan your Magic Band or you scan your phone and it will connect those photos to your account. It's very convenient. You can see all of those photos on your My Disney Experience app. Sometimes right away, sometimes there's a little bit of a lag. Don't worry about it. But if you don't have the Memory Maker package, which is the package that has bought all of those photos, all the photos that you will see will have watermarks. And I remember when I was there in like 2008, 2009, those watermarks were not very prominent. So you could definitely screenshot those and still print them out. I know I did that with my former partner. We had all these like bootleg Memory Maker shots. But now the watermarks are right over your face. So there's no way you can quote unquote steal the photos if you don't have the Memory Maker package. You can buy the Memory Maker package after your trip. It is definitely way more expensive, but you can also buy like one-off photos. That also is very expensive, but if you just see this really great picture of you and Mickey Mouse and you want to get it, then that is an option. However, if you know that you're going to go and do a lot of character meet and greets and like ride photos and things like that, then go and just buy the Memory Maker package ahead of time. I said in the episode of like what not to do solo is I did not recommend getting the Memory Maker package for one day because it's just like not worth it. If you're going for a few days, then just get the whole Memory Maker package. I mean, it just gets cheaper the more days you use it. So I definitely encourage you, especially when you're going solo, to be able to get all those like nice full body shots as well. So with the characters, oftentimes you're able to get those photos as part of your package if you buy them. However, you can also get pictures with your cell phone. You can do selfies. Of course, I usually like to be like, let's take one selfie. I don't know, it's nice to have a collection of selfies with the different characters. However, all of the characters will always have a character attendant next to them. Oftentimes they're wearing blue shirts, and you can ask the character attendant to take photos for you. You can also ask the PhotoPass photographers to take photos for you on your cell phone. I've never seen anybody say no. It doesn't matter to them if you buy them or you don't buy them. Just ask people to take photographs. It's a super, super convenient way to make sure you get that full body shot, but also it's a really nice way to kind of invite someone in that little ball of excitement that you're going to be generating by standing next to a character and getting a photo with them. So I've always had really good experiences when I've asked people to take photographs. And sometimes, especially when it's like these Gen Z, like these like kind of youngish, you know, like I'm in my 40s, so youngish, I'm talking like 20. They will take like literally 100 photos of you. They'll just like put their finger on the cell phone like button and they will just take all these pictures for you so you can choose what the best angles are. I kind of prefer like the millennial and Gen X photographers who are just like, I took these 3, I hope they're fine. Like, yeah, that's fine. Do you remember like the Roll of 24 film? Like, yeah, those were the days. Anyway, so make sure you ask people to take photos for you. Ask those cast members if that's what they're there for. Use the My Disney Experience app to find the characters. And again, just really embrace it and have fun and know that it is not awkward. Like, don't get that narrative in your brain that it's awkward, this is awkward, this is awkward. No, it's going to be fun. Reminder that the cast members do this all day. They know better than you. They know how to pull people out to have a conversation with them. So just meet their energy. Don't feel like you have to create this energy or apologize for being there because you're an adult and you're there solo. No. Like, just enjoy your time and enjoy those photos and enjoy those interactions because, like I said, so many solos talk about how those character interactions are such an important part of their trip. So I hope it becomes a really important part of your trip as well. And I can't wait to talk about character dining next week because, you know, it was something that Again, we didn't do really growing up, so it wasn't really something I ever thought of, but it has become such a great way to meet characters and get photos with characters and take a break in the middle of the day and eat something. And I've really, really started to enjoy ensuring that there's a character meal at almost every one of my trips. Now, as of now, I actually don't have a character dining meal booked for my next trip, which is next week. So a week a week to the day that you are hearing this, which is Tuesday, I will be off in Walt Disney World, and I cannot wait. I'm going to be there for Christmas. I'm going to go to the Christmas parties. I'm going to go to the International Festival of the Holidays. I'm going to check out all the Christmas trees in Disney Springs. I'm going to go to all the different resorts and see their Christmas trees and their gingerbread displays. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about all of that for the podcast. And I cannot wait. So make sure, again, that you're following me on Instagram so you can watch all of those, all of those adventures while I'm doing that. But there will be an episode next week. I'll make sure to record it ahead of time on character dining. And then, again, the episodes after that will be about the Disney Christmas content. Now, of course, if I'm giving you an episode on December 15th or whatever, I recognize that you probably will not be racing to Disney World in the next 10 days to do anything that I suggested or eat anything that I'm recommending. So I'm really going to focus on those December episodes and just trying to describe the Christmas feel in being there so that you can bring some of that to your own Christmas thinking and planning yourself. So I can't wait to do that. As always, Solos, have a wonderful, wonderful week. Thank you for your well wishes, and I can't wait to talk to you next. Bye. Hey Solos, it's Samantha. I hope you enjoyed this episode and all the episodes of Disney Solo Magic, the #1 podcast for solo travel to Disney World. If you want to support the podcast, the best way to do it is to buy me a coffee. The link to my Buy Me a Coffee page is in the description below, and I really, really appreciate that support to get me caffeinated through another week of podcast recording and editing. However, if you don't want to buy me a coffee, that's super cool as well. The other ways you can support this podcast is just to make sure that you rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and or YouTube, and to make sure that other people know about this podcast by sharing your favorite episodes or some tips and tricks and tagging me. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads, and the best way to get in touch with me directly is through a direct message on Instagram. I can't wait to continue creating this content for you. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you next week. Bye!